The sun rose slowly over the quiet hills of Alupaju, painting the sky in soft orange light. Ao, a young goat herder, woke before dawn as usual. He tied his old brown sandals, picked up his long stick and stepped out of his small mud house. His younger sister, Fadik, was still asleep on her mat, curled up beside a tiny oil lamp. Ao smiled at her, covered her with a cloth and whispered, "Sleep well, little one. I'll bring milk for breakfast." The goats bleated as soon as he opened the pen. "Easy, easy," he said with a laugh. He loved his goats like family. As he led them up the rocky path, he began to sing a soft tune his late father had taught him. His voice echoed gently in the quiet morning, mixing with the rustle of trees and the distant cry of birds. Life in Alupaju was simple. The people were poor but they cared for one another. Ao didn't have much but he always shared what he had. When a widow needed firewood, he carried it for her. When a child cried of hunger, he gave goat milk to the family. People often said, "Ao may be poor but his heart is gold." By afternoon the sun was high and hot. Ao rested under a big tree watching his goats graze nearby. Suddenly, a loud noise broke the peace. A sleek black car came speeding down the dusty road before stopping with a strange clanking sound. Ao stood up quickly. He had never seen such a fine car before. Its windows were dark and its surface shone like glass. The door opened and a woman stepped out. She was dressed in a white shirt and trousers, her face calm but serious. Her name was Laura. She was a billionaire from Lagos, known for her business empire. She had come to inspect land for a new company project. But now her expensive car had broken down in the middle of the village road. Ao walked toward her slowly, his stick in hand. "Good afternoon, madam. Is something wrong?" Laura frowned. "I think the engine stopped working. My driver has gone to look for help." Ao nodded. "Let me see, maybe I can help." She gave him a puzzled look. "You? Do you know anything about cars?" Ao chuckled softly. "Not much, but I know about hard work and fixing old things." He bent down, opened the car bonnet carefully and examined the wires. The heat made him sweat but he stayed calm. He asked Lara for a small piece of wire from his goat rope and a bit of water. She handed them to him, still unsure of what he was doing. After a few minutes, he closed the bonnet and said, "Try it now, madam." Lara pressed the start button. The engine roared to life. She blinked in surprise and turned to him. "You fixed it without any fancy tools?" Ao smiled shyly. "We use what we have, madam. When you live here, you learn to make a way where there seems to be none." Lara was silent for a moment, just watching him. He was covered in dust, his clothes old and worn, yet his eyes shone with calmness and pride. She felt something strange, admiration. "Thank you," she said finally. "What do I owe you?" Ao shook his head quickly. "Nothing, madam. You were stuck and I helped. That's all." She looked at him again, almost confused. "You don't want money?" He smiled. "Money is good, but respect and kindness last longer." Lara stared at him, surprised by his words. In the city everyone wanted something, money, power, or fame. But this man asked for nothing. She turned to her driver, who had just returned. "We can go now," she said. But even as she entered the car, her mind stayed on Ao. As the car drove off, she looked through the window and saw him again, sitting under the tree surrounded by goats, humming softly as if nothing had happened. For a long time she kept thinking about his quiet smile. Later that evening Lara arrived at her guest house in the town nearby. She sat by the window, sipping tea, but her thoughts wandered back to the dusty road, the humble herder and his gentle voice saying, "Money is good, but respect and kindness last longer." In her world, she was surrounded by people who bowed to her wealth, who smiled only when she offered something in return. But Ao, he was different. He had helped her simply because it was the right thing to do. That kind of sincerity was rare, even among the richest. Meanwhile, in Alupaju, Ao returned home with his goats. Fadik ran to him, laughing. "Brother, you're late. Did the goats run away again?" He chuckled. "No, Fadik. I just met someone new." She gasped playfully. "A woman?" Ao laughed again. "Yes, but not like you think. She's a rich lady from the city. Her car broke down and I helped her." Fadik's eyes widened. "A rich lady? Wow. Did she give you money?" Ao shook his head. "No. But she said thank you and that's enough." Fadik frowned. "Brother, you should have asked for something." He smiled and patted her head. "My reward will come when it's time. Don't worry." That night after dinner he sat outside watching the stars. The cool breeze carried the sound of crickets and the soft bleating of goats. He thought about the woman, her sharp eyes, her smooth voice, and the way she had looked at him before leaving. He didn't know why, but he hoped she would come back. Far away, Lara couldn't sleep either. She lay in her soft bed, but her mind was restless. For the first time in a long while, she felt curious, not about business or profit, but about a simple man who had fixed her car with nothing but courage, patience, and kindness. Who was he really? She wondered aloud. And as the moonlight touched her face, she smiled faintly. Maybe, she thought, the village still had something her world had lost, pure hearts that expected nothing in return. Neither of them knew that this small meeting on an ordinary afternoon in Ilupaju would change both of their lives forever. The sun rose softly over the quiet hills of Ilupaju, painting the land in gold and pink. The air was cool and the sound of roosters echoed across the fields. Ao was already awake. He stretched, washed his face with water from a clay pot, and stepped outside to feed his goats. They bleated loudly when they saw him, circling around his legs, hungry for attention and food. He laughed and said, "Patience, my friends, patience. Everyone will eat." While Ao worked, Lara's car drove along the narrow path that led back to the village. She had barely slept the night before. Her thoughts kept drifting to the young goat herder who had fixed her car so simply, and refused any payment. In her world, people did things only for money or advantage. But that man had been different. He had been calm, gentle, and humble. She leaned forward in her seat. "Stop here," she told her driver. The car halted near the same open field where she had met Ao. She stepped out, her white shoes already gathering dust, but she didn't mind. She looked around and soon spotted him under a tree, surrounded by goats. He was humming softly, tossing dry grass to them, and smiling as if he had no worries in the world. Lara called out, "Good morning, Ao." He turned quickly, surprised but pleased. "Ah, madam. You came back." "Yes," she said, walking closer. "I came to thank you properly for helping me yesterday." Ao shook his head with a smile. "There is no need for thanks, madam. Anyone would have done the same." She raised a brow. "I'm not sure about that. Most people would have asked for money first." Ao chuckled lightly. "Maybe. But I believe kindness should not have a price." Lara watched him closely. He was different from the people she usually met. There was no pride in his voice, no greed in his eyes. Just honesty. She smiled slightly. "You wake up early." He laughed, his eyes bright. "The goats won't wait for breakfast. If I'm late, they'll make sure the whole village knows." She laughed too softly. For a moment, the world felt simple again. Just laughter, sunshine, and a gentle man feeding his goats. They sat under the tree for a while, talking. Lara asked him about his life and he told her stories about the village. He spoke of the long dry seasons, the laughter at the market, and the sound of drums during festivals. But what touched her most was when he mentioned the children. "There are some orphans here," Ao said quietly. "Their parents were lost to sickness and hunger. I try to help them when I can, give them milk from the goats, sometimes food, sometimes just stories to make them smile." Lara looked at him in surprise. "You take care of them by yourself?" He nodded. "Yes, madam. I don't have much, but I share what I can. When my father died, people helped me. Now it is my turn to help others." For a moment, Lara couldn't speak. The man who had so little still found a way to give. In her world, giving always came with expectation, but here it came from the heart. Ao turned to her and smiled softly. "You must think I am foolish, yes? A poor man helping others when he cannot even help himself." Lara shook her head. "No. I think you are wiser than most people I know." They sat in silence for a while, the only sounds being the soft chewing of goats and the rustle of the wind through the trees. Lara felt peace, something she hadn't felt in years. Finally she stood up. "I have to go now," she said. "But I'm glad I came back." Ao stood too and bowed his head slightly. "You are always welcome here, madam." Before leaving, Lara took a small envelope from her bag and tried to hand it to him. "Please take this. It's not payment. Just something to help the children." Ao looked at the envelope, then back at her. "Thank you, madam. If it will help the little ones, I will accept it. May God bless you." When she returned to her car, her driver asked, "Madam, who is that man?" She smiled faintly. "Someone who is richer in kindness than most people I know." As the car drove away, she looked out the window and saw Ao waving with a simple smile. His goats followed him down the path, kicking up little clouds of dust. She thought about his laughter, his humble words, and his kindness. For the first time in years, her heart felt warm. That night at the guest house, Lara sat by the window again. The stars shone bright in the dark sky. She sipped a cup of tea and whispered to herself, "That man, He lives with so little, yet he gives so much. Maybe true wealth is not money at all. Meanwhile, in Alupaju, Ao finished his dinner of yam and palm oil with Fadik. She asked him curiously, "Brother, did the rich woman come back today?" He smiled. "Yes, she did." Her eyes lit up. "Did she give you something?" He nodded. "For the orphans." "Not for me." Fadik grinned. "She must be kind." Ao looked thoughtful. "Yes, she is kind. And she has a gentle smile. Maybe even the rich can have gentle hearts." He leaned back against the wall and stared at the night sky. He wasn't sure why, but he felt something new inside him. Something like hope, maybe even admiration. Lara too could not forget him. His face, his voice, his quiet strength, they stayed in her thoughts. She had met many powerful men, but none had left such a calm impression on her heart. As she lay in bed, she whispered softly, "Ao, the man with nothing, and yet he has everything that matters." And somewhere under the same stars, Ao looked up at the moon and smiled, feeling as though someone far away was thinking of him too. The days passed slowly in Alupaju, warm and peaceful as always. The goats still wandered across the hills, children still laughed by the stream, and the air still smelled of earth and palm oil. But something had quietly changed in Ao's life. Ever since Lara's visit, his days had become brighter. Every few days, the sound of an engine would break the village silence, and people would rush out to see the shiny car that came from Lagos. The children always shouted, "Auntie Lara is here," and ran to greet her. She would smile and hand out small gifts, books, pencils, and colorful clothes. Ao always tried to act calm when she came, but his heart beat faster each time. He would wipe his hands on his wrapper and walk up shyly saying, "Welcome, madam. The goats missed you." Lara laughed every time he said that. "Did they?" she would reply, pretending to be serious. "Or was it their owner who missed me?" He would look away smiling. The truth was he did. The villagers began to whisper among themselves. They watched the billionaire woman sitting under a mango tree, laughing and sharing roasted corn with a poor goat herder, and it didn't make sense to them. "Why does that rich lady keep coming here?" they asked. "She must be planning something big." But nothing about Lara's visits was about business anymore. Each time she came, she stayed longer. She would walk with Ao to the hills, listening to the sound of the wind and the goats' bells. She learned how to milk them, though she made a mess every time. The children laughed and Ao teased her gently, "Even goats can tell who's from the city." Lara laughed so hard that tears came to her eyes. "Then maybe I should live here until they get used to me," she said. Fadik, who loved teasing her brother, started to notice the way Ao's eyes softened whenever Lara's name was mentioned. One evening, she said while cooking, "Brother, you talk about Madame Lara like she's part of the family." Ao smiled shyly. "She helps the children. That's all." Fadik giggled. "Maybe she likes your goats." Ao laughed too. "Then I am a lucky man. The goats are finally famous." But deep down he knew Fadik's teasing had truth. He had grown fond of Lara, not for her money or beauty but for her heart. She treated everyone with respect, even the old men who sat by the roadside. She laughed with children, listened to stories, and never acted proud. One evening, the sky turned orange and purple as the sun began to set. Ao and Lara sat quietly on a small rock, watching the goats return home. The wind was soft, carrying the smell of dry grass and palm fruit. Lara sighed gently. "You know, Ao, I used to think happiness came from owning big things, houses, cars, companies. But when I come here, I feel something I never felt in the city." Ao looked at her curiously. "And what is that, madam?" She smiled faintly. "Peace. You remind me what real happiness looks like." He was silent for a moment, then said softly, "And you remind me that wealth is more than gold." For a while they didn't speak. The sound of crickets filled the air, and the orange sun slowly dipped behind the hills. Lara looked at Ao, his calm face, his gentle eyes, the quiet strength in his voice. She realized she admired him deeply. Ao too felt his heart beating differently. He had never known a woman like her, rich yet humble, strong yet gentle. Their eyes met. No words were needed. In that quiet evening under the wide African sky, both hearts spoke silently to each other. That night Lara couldn't sleep. She sat by the window in her small guest house looking at the stars. Her thoughts wandered back to Ao, his laughter, his kindness, his simple way of seeing the world. Her driver noticed her silence the next morning and asked, "Madam, are we returning to Lagos today?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "No. Not yet." In the village, Ao was also lost in thought. Fadik watched him as he stood by the goats, staring at the road where Lara's car usually appeared. You're waiting for her again, she teased. He smiled but said nothing. Inside he was wondering if someone like Lara could ever feel the same way about a poor man like him. Later that afternoon Lara arrived again. The children ran to her as always, but this time she walked straight to Ao. She had a small basket in her hand. I brought something, she said. Ao opened it and saw bread, roasted groundnuts and fresh mangoes. You didn't have to, he said softly. I wanted to, she replied. You share everything with others. I thought I should share something with you. They sat under the tree again eating quietly. The goats rested near them and the air felt peaceful. Lara looked at him and asked, Ao, do you ever dream of leaving this place? Going somewhere new? He shook his head slowly. No, madam. My life is here, the land, the people, the animals. This is home. She smiled sadly. You make even the simplest life sound beautiful. He looked at her gently. It is beautiful when your heart is at peace. A small silence followed. Lara's hand brushed against his as they both reached for the same piece of mango. For a brief moment time seemed to stop. They looked at each other, and both smiled quietly. The sun dipped lower, casting golden light over the hills. Lara stood, brushing the dust from her dress. I'll come again soon, she said. Ao nodded. The goats will be waiting. As she walked back to her car, she turned once more and saw him watching her. She smiled and he waved, his heart full of something he didn't yet understand. That night Ao whispered to himself, maybe even the rich can love like the poor, simply and truly. And far away in her quiet room Lara whispered almost the same words, maybe love is not about what we have, but who we find peace with. When news reached Chief Adideo in Lagos that his only daughter had been spending time with a poor goat herder, his anger rose like fire. He slammed his hand on his desk and shouted, Lara, have you lost your senses? A billionaire's daughter falling for a herder? Lara stood quietly in front of him, her heart beating fast but her face calm. Father, she said softly, you raised me to respect people, not their money. Ao may be poor, but his heart is rich. Her father frowned deeply. Rich in what? Goats and dust. Rich in kindness, she replied. He helps others without asking for anything in return. He's a good man. Chief Adideo turned away, shaking his head. You don't understand the world, Lara. Love won't feed you. It won't build an empire. A man like that will only hold you back. But Lara didn't agree. Father, an empire without love feels empty. Ao taught me that. Her father's face hardened. Enough. You will stop seeing him. Do you hear me? This foolishness ends now. That night, Lara sat alone on her balcony, looking up at the stars. Tears filled her eyes. Her heart wanted Ao, but her father's words echoed in her mind. Meanwhile in Ilupaju, Ao sat by the fire, staring into the flames. He had heard the news from the villagers who whispered that Lara's father was furious. The rich man's daughter will be taken away, they said. Her father won't allow this friendship. Ao sighed heavily. He didn't want to bring pain or shame to Lara. Maybe it's best I leave, he whispered to himself. She belongs to a world far above mine. Fadik overheard and ran to him. Brother, you can't just go. You love her. Ao smiled sadly. Love doesn't always mean holding on. Sometimes, it means letting go so the other person can be free. Before sunrise he packed a small bag, took his walking stick and began to head toward the river, the path that led out of Ilupaju. The morning air was cold and the mist lay low over the hills. The goats bleated softly behind him as if asking him to stay. His heart felt heavy but he walked on. Just then he heard a familiar voice call out, Ao? He turned around, and there she was. Lara, still wearing her city dress, her shoes covered in dust, running toward him. Her driver stood far behind, trying to catch up. Ao froze. Lara, what are you doing here? She stopped in front of him, breathing hard. I heard you were leaving. He looked away. It's better this way. Your father is angry. I don't want to cause you pain. She shook her head, tears in her eyes. If you walk away, you take my peace with you. He was silent for a long moment, his heart torn. Lara, I am just a herder. I have no fine clothes, no big house. People will laugh at you. She stepped closer and said softly, let them laugh. I don't want a man the world respects. I want the man my heart trusts. Her words hit him like a wave. He saw the truth in her eyes. No pride, no doubt, just love. Ao swallowed hard. I never thought someone like you would care for someone like me. Lara smiled gently. Love doesn't ask where we come from. It only asks if we are true. He looked into her eyes and his voice trembled. Then I will stay not because I deserve you but because love is honest. She smiled, wiping a tear from her cheek. And that's all I ever wanted. They stood quietly by the river, the sound of the water flowing softly beside them. The morning sun rose behind the hills, painting everything gold. In that moment nothing else mattered, not wealth, not status, not pride. Just two hearts that finally understood each other. Back in Lagos, Chief Adedeo paced the floor, expecting his daughter to return. But when she didn't, he grew worried. Later that day his driver came to him with a message. Sir, Madame Lara is still in Olupaju. She refuses to leave. The chief was furious at first, but something in his heart began to soften. He thought about his daughter's happiness. He remembered how her mother used to tell him, "A good heart is more valuable than gold." Days later he decided to visit Olupaju himself. When he arrived he saw his daughter sitting under a tree beside Ao, both laughing as the goats played around them. For the first time he looked closely at the young man he had judged, and saw a person of dignity and humility. Ao stood up quickly and greeted him respectfully, bowing his head. "Good afternoon, sir." Chief Adedeo studied him for a while, then sighed. "You are the one who fixed my daughter's car that day?" "Yes, sir," Ao replied quietly. "And you're the one who's been taking care of those children she keeps talking about?" "Yes, sir." The chief was silent for a while, then nodded slowly. "Maybe I judged too quickly." Lara smiled softly. "Father, I told you he was special." Chief Adedeo looked at Ao and said, "If you can make my daughter this happy, then maybe you're richer than I thought." Ao bowed again. "Thank you, sir. I will never bring her shame." The chief gave a small smile. "We'll see about that." As he turned to leave, Lara ran after him and hugged him tightly. "Thank you, father." He patted her back and said quietly, "Just don't forget who you are, and always keep that smile." When he left, Ao and Lara stood by the river again watching the sunset. The orange sky reflected on the water, calm and bright. Lara whispered, "I told you love would find a way." Ao smiled, taking her hand gently. "And I will never doubt it again." The goats bleated softly nearby as if blessing their promise. The river flowed on, carrying their love like a quiet song through the heart of Olupaju. Months later the quiet village of Olupaju came alive with songs, drums and laughter. The air smelled of flowers and roasted yam. Women wore bright wrappers, children ran around with joy, and even the goats seemed excited. The villagers had been waiting for this day, the day Ao, the humble goat herder, would marry Lara, the billionaire's daughter who had chosen love over wealth. Under the big mango tree in the center of the village, chairs were set, and colorful fabrics hung like ribbons in the wind. The sun shone warmly, casting a soft glow over everything. Ao stood by the old wooden table that served as the altar, wearing a clean white agbada. It wasn't fancy but it fit him perfectly, simple, pure, and true just like his heart. His sister, Fadik, stood beside him, smiling proudly. "You see, brother," she said quietly, "even the rich can live in a poor man's world when love leads the way." Ao chuckled softly. "It's not a poor man's world anymore, Fadik. It's our world." Soon a white car stopped near the field and everyone turned. Lara stepped out, her dress simple yet elegant. She wore no heavy jewelry, just a small golden necklace shaped like a heart. The villagers gasped softly. "She looks like an angel," one woman whispered. Chief Adedeo, her father, followed behind her. For the first time he wasn't wearing his usual suit. He had dressed in a traditional agbada, the same color as Ao's. When he saw the crowd cheering, his heart softened even more. He could see the happiness in his daughter's eyes, the peace that had been missing for so long. As Lara walked down the path toward Ao, the drums slowed and the singing grew gentle. Ao's eyes glistened as he watched her come closer. When she reached him, she smiled and whispered, "You waited." He smiled back. "I would have waited forever." The old village priest, Baba Sola, cleared his throat and began the ceremony. "Today we celebrate two hearts, one from the hills and one from the city, that have found each other not through riches but through goodness." The crowd clapped and cheered. Even the children shouted, "Ao and Lara! Ao and Lara!" When it was time for the vows, Ao took Lara's hands gently. "Lara," he said, his voice steady, "you came into my simple life and showed me that love can live anywhere, even among goats and dust. I promise to love you with the same honesty that first fixed your car that day." The crowd laughed softly and Lara smiled, tears shining in her eyes. "Ao," she replied, "you showed me what real wealth means, not money but heart. I promise to walk beside you in city streets or village roads, wherever life takes us." The villagers clapped again and some women began ululating in joy. Baba Sola raised his hands. Then by love and by truth I bless this union. May their home always know peace. Chief Adideo stepped forward. For a moment, everyone grew silent. The man who once opposed this marriage now looked at Ao with warmth in his eyes. He placed his hand on Ao's shoulder and said, "My son, you have taught me that real wealth is not found in gold or houses, but in a pure heart. Today I give you my daughter, not because you are rich, but because you make her rich in happiness." Ao bowed respectfully. "Thank you, sir. I will honor her always." Lara turned to her father and hugged him tightly. "You kept your promise, Daddy," she whispered. He nodded. "And you kept your faith." The drums started again, louder this time. People began to dance, clapping their hands and singing. Musical notes: love has found a home in Ilupaju. Goats are dancing, hearts are true. The rich and the poor side by side. Love is the song we cannot hide. Musical notes. Children ran around throwing flower petals into the air. Fatik danced with Mama Funk, the village cook, while even the goats wandered near the mango tree as if joining in the joy. Later in the evening, when the sun began to set, Ao and Lara walked hand in hand to the small farm they had built together near the river. There, rows of vegetables grew beside a new wooden building, a small school for the village children. Lara smiled as she watched the children chasing each other. "Can you believe it, Ao? A school, a farm, and peace, all from love." Ao nodded. "Love built this, Lara. Love built everything." Every morning after that they worked side by side, Ao caring for the goats, Lara teaching the children. The villagers often said that their laughter could be heard from one end of the hill to the other. Sometimes travelers from faraway cities would stop by and ask, "Where is the place where a billionaire married a goat herder?" And the villagers would smile proudly and point toward the mango tree. "There," they'd say. "That's where love changed everything." One afternoon, as Ao and Lara rested under that same mango tree, she leaned her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever miss the city?" she asked softly. He shook his head. "No. The city has many lights, but none as warm as your heart." She smiled, closing her eyes. "Then I am home." As the breeze blew gently through the leaves and the goats grazed nearby, Ao looked around at the life they had built, simple, honest, and full of love. "Who would have thought," he said with a chuckle, "that a broken car would bring all this?" Lara laughed. "Maybe it wasn't the car, Ao. Maybe it was destiny." The sun sank behind the hills, painting the sky with gold and orange. The sound of drums from the village echoed softly in the distance. And as they sat together, hand in hand, they knew that their love, born from kindness, strengthened by courage and blessed by forgiveness, would live forever in the heart of Ilupaju. The end.